It's finally here! A car I've been waiting for quite a while, and one that America has had for a fair bit of time. It is, of course, the Tesla Model Y. Now, the best way to think of this is essentially an SUV version of the car we all know and love, the Tesla Model 3. But the thing is, this has been available in America for quite a while now, and it's only just arriving in the UK. And so because Tesla's taken its time, you now have the likes of the Hyundai Ioniq 5 and Audi Q4 e-tron, to name but a few. Now, how does the Model Y stack up against them? Well, today we're going to find out. But before we go any further, why not give us a thumbs up if you like what you see, and subscribe for more awesome car videos just like this one. Now, you might think of the Model Y as a baby version of the Tesla Model X, but really it shares a lot of its components, officially 75%, although it seems like more, with the Tesla Model 3. So you get the kind of same overall headlight shape as the Model 3, and also this kind of very sleek, some would call fish-like front end. Now, there are different things to set it apart. We've got bits of cladding around the side of the car to give it that crossover look, and it's also a little bit taller and also a bit longer as well. Now, before we go any further, let's just address the elephant in the room, the panel gaps. Everyone seems to want to talk about it. I have seen really bad panel gaps on Teslas before, but on this Model Y, they seem absolutely fine. Sure, they can seem a little bit big in places, but it's relatively even all over the car. So, as far as I can see, no build quality issues on the outside, at least. Onto the wheels. This is the long-range version, so you get a mix of two different options. There's the entry-level 19-inch rims. These are the optional 20s. If you go for the performance model, which is going to come out a little bit later in the UK, there'll also be 21s available as well. This car comes in pearl white, but there are 4 other colours. They are solid black, deep blue, midnight silver, and also red, with red being the most expensive colour to go for. And at the back, just wanted to point out the roofline really. Even though we've got that SUV look, this very much follows in the footsteps of the Model X, of having a very sloped roofline and this very thin ducktail spoiler at the back. I must say, it's actually a very good looking car. And while I don't think that Teslas are the most cutting edge in terms of design, I think they're just universally appreciated. And that's probably why they're so damn popular. One of the big benefits, though, of buying a Tesla is you get access to the supercharger network. Now, granted, it's not quite as comprehensive in the UK as it is in the US, but it's still really easy to find one. And also, public chargers are dreadful. I used one recently that charged me £8 to not charge my car because the website crashed. Anyway, if you find one of Tesla's V3 superchargers, you can go from 0 to 80% battery in about 35 minutes. Now, those chargers run at 250 kilowatts at the moment, but there are plans to increase that up to 300. Now, how does that compare with the rest of the competition? Well, if you take something like the Audi Q4 e-tron, you're looking at around about 125 kilowatts, while the Volvo C40 comes in at 150 kilowatts. And you can watch my review of that by clicking the link in the top right-hand corner. Now, the Hyundai Ioniq 5 actually beats all of them because it's built on 800-volt architecture and can go all the way up to 350 kilowatts, but then you've got to use a public charger, and most of them, like I said, are dreadful. When it comes to boot space, the Model Y just blows the competition out of the water, because in the back we have 854 litres, which is gigantic. Now, that does also include all the little storage compartments in the car. So, while we have a very big main boot with a nice low load lip, so it's easy to get stuff in and out, there's also a huge storage compartment underneath the boot floor. And coupled with that, you get a secondary compartment at the back of the boot, plus 2 big storage bins either side of the boot floor itself. And something that you don't get on the Model 3 are quick release buttons for the rear seats. Now, you do have to manually put them back in place, but if you've got something massive that you want to load into the back of the car, well, you don't have to lean into the back, just press these 2 buttons. Anybody who watches Yes Auto will know that I love a frunk, and on a Tesla you're almost guaranteed one. Up front here, we've got 117 litres of storage, which, when you combine it with the rear space, means you get nearly 1,000 litres before even lowering the rear seats. Now, something else I wanted to point out is, on the original Model 3s, you got a more traditional heating system for the car, but on the Model Y and also the latest Model 3s, you get a heat pump, which is much more efficient and less battery intensive. If you put in an order for a Model Y today, there will be two different variants to choose from. One is the long range, and there's also the performance. Now, the long range is the car we see here, and as the name suggests, it offers the best range with 315 miles under Europe's WLTP system, but in the US they use something called EPA, and that rates it at 326 miles. And also, a lot of people believe that the EPA system is more accurate than what we use over here in Europe. Now, if you go for the performance, naturally range takes a slight dip. You're looking at 298 miles under WLTP or 303 on EPA. However, again, as the name suggests, it's much faster in a straight line. You're looking at a 0 to 60 time of 3.5 seconds, which is very much supercar territory, and is 1.3 seconds faster than the long range, which is by no means a slouch. Both cars are dual motor, meaning all-wheel drive, and you'll find the long range has a top speed of 135 miles an hour, while the performance comes in at 150. Just note though that Tesla does like to update its range on the regular, so if you're watching this video in the future, hello from the past, and some of those numbers may have changed slightly. One thing I wanted to mention is that on the original Model 3s, you got chrome door handles and also chrome surrounds around the windows. But on the Model Y and new Model 3s, you now get satin black. There's also no frame around the windows on the Model Y, and they are double glazed as well, so it should be nice and quiet when you're on the inside. Now let's talk about price. The long range comes in at £54,990, and you'll spend another 10 grand if you want to go for the performance. Deliveries for the long range should start in around early 2022, but the performance is going to come in a little bit later. Expect around the middle of next year. There are also some optional extras to choose from as well. The big ones are the advanced autopilot for £3,400, and that includes things like being able to change lanes automatically on the go and smart summon. But you can also get the full self-driving pack for £6,800, and what that does is include things like traffic light recognition and stop sign recognition, and it'll also auto steer once it's been developed. All you need to do is update your car once it's ready. And of course, you can head over to yesauto.co.uk because we've got plenty of new and used deals on Teslas, so you don't have to pay full price if you don't want to. As I mentioned, the Model Y shares a lot in common with the Model 3, and that is very much the same on the inside. The overall layout is pretty much exactly the same as the Model 3, you just sit a little bit higher than you do in the saloon. So if you want to watch my full breakdown of the interior, why not click the link in the top right hand corner to see my full review of the Tesla Model 3. Now, what I did want to point out is that there are two different trim levels that you can go for on the inside of your Model Y. So the standard car comes with black leather seats and also wood trim on the dashboard, but this is the premium interior, which comes with white leather and white highlights on the dash. However, the Model Y is actually animal-free, so the leather that you've got down here is faux leather rather than real leather, but it does still feel of a pretty high quality. Now, dominating the dashboard is this massive display which controls literally everything in the car. There's not even an instrument panel to see your speed, that's on the display as well. For instance, if I wanted to activate the wipers, there's no wiper stalk. I actually have to use the display to do so, which seems a bit fiddly at first, but is actually relatively intuitive to use once you get to use the car a little bit more. If I wanted to open the boot, I just literally tap the boot on this graphic of the car, and it also goes for adjusting the mirrors as well. That's done through the center screen. We have Google Maps integration for the sat-nav, which looks really good and is very intuitive to use. The only thing I will note though is that you don't get Apple CarPlay or Android Auto integration in this car. Tesla says that its system does pretty much everything that you could want from your smartphone, which is kind of true, but I quite like having the speed camera recognition that you can get on Waze because, well, there are speed cameras everywhere in the UK. You can also entertain yourself when you're not moving around. If you go to the entertainment tab, there's lots of games that you can play, but you could also watch Netflix or go on YouTube, which is super handy. And there's also the famous toy box of where you can have the emission mode, which will give you whoopee cushion sounds. And there's romance mode, so you can put on a fire and relax. Other neat features, I love the wireless charging pads below the panel. There's also lots of storage, a big storage bin in the center console and also below the armrest, and 2 very decent cup holders. And again, we should really touch on build quality. Tesla's not had the greatest reputation of it in the past. I thought they had made a big step up with the Model 3, and that's very much replicated here in the Model Y. Everything feels of a really high quality and put together to a high standard. So Tesla really is catching up with the rest of the competition. If you're tall, then you'll love the back of the Model Y because there's just so much space back here. Now, I'm not very tall, I'm just under 6 foot, and knee room is perfectly fine with the driver's seat in my position, and the same goes for headroom. There is so much extra headroom still to go, so if you're 6 foot and over, you'll be absolutely fine in the back of the Model Y. Not only that, but there's actually quite a lot of space below the front seat, so if you want to stretch out a little bit, you can do so pretty easily. And because this isn't a combustion car, there's no transmission tunnel, so even if you're sat in the middle, you've still got quite a bit of legroom. Now, the seats are mostly comfortable. The only thing I would say is that they're very flat, so on a long journey, you might start to get a little bit of discomfort, but it does the job just fine. Also, in the US, you can spec your Model Y as a 7-seater, although those last seats are a tad bit cramped. But in the UK, currently, it's only available as a 5-seater. So you'd think that with the Model Y being so similar to the Model 3, technically at least, it would drive pretty much exactly the same. But there are actually quite a few differences. First of all, the Model Y is actually a little bit stiffer than the Model 3 because it's taller and heavier. So if you're going through the bends, you've got to keep that body roll in check. And to do that, you need to stiffen up the car. Now that has both pros and cons. The pros are that this thing drives like a sports car. It is just so flat and responsive. No matter how fast you go through a corner, it feels like you're completely stuck to the road, and that lets you really drive the car with confidence. Yes, it does feel a little bit bigger on the inside compared to a Model 3, but really it is just as easy to drive. That's coupled up with a really great steering system, which is really responsive. So even the smallest input on the wheel results in a pretty quick direction change, and at first it actually takes some getting used to because you're so used to driving other cars or normal cars that the tiniest input can actually make some of your passengers feel a little bit car sick. The wheel's got some really nice weight to it as well, so it does give you this kind of sporty feeling when behind the wheel, although you can actually change the way it reacts. So at the moment I've got it in sport. If I go to comfort, the wheel gets a lot lighter. However, it really is just as responsive. It kind of feels like a computer game to drive. It's just so easy, yet also rewarding, that it feels like anybody could get into this, even if you're not that confident and feel like you're on top of the car, you're in control. The downside, though, to having that slightly stiffer suspension is that the Model Y is firm. It's firmer than a Model 3. So I can feel pretty much all the lumps and bumps in the road, and it's just kind of sending it all through the cabin. It can be quite boomy as well, so if you hit a particularly nasty bump, it can send this quite boomy sound through the cabin. I would say it's only really detectable if you're like me and a car journalist and test cars all the time, but if you're particularly sensitive to that and you're looking for a very soft and relaxing ride, then you might want to consider the Model 3 over the Model Y. But I think what will grab your attention pretty much as soon as you set off in the Model Y is just how unbelievably fast it is. I mean, 0 to 60 in 4.8 seconds in the long range. And I'll admit, I don't think you need the performance model to have fun, this thing is so ridiculously fast. It just feels like it handles any situation. I've been in performance cars that feel slower than this. You can even change the way the throttle responds as well. So in standard mode, it does feel quite stabby. So even the slightest touch of the accelerator and you're being flung off into the horizon. However, there is a chill mode in the acceleration settings, which just makes the Model Y feel like a very normal car indeed. And it's all that versatility that really helps the Model Y out. It can kind of be whatever you want it to be. If you want it to be a crazy performance car, you can do so. If you want it to be a bit more relaxed, a bit more of an everyday car, it's got you covered. I just wish it had adaptive dampers so that you could slacken off the ride a little bit. So something I brought up in my Model 3 review that people got a little bit confused about is I said that the big central display could be a bit distracting when you're on the go. And some people had a very valid argument of, well, you set the car up on the display and then when you're on the move, you don't really need to worry about it. And that is fair enough, because things like wipers, yes, they're on the display, but they're actually really easy to access. I would say the only thing is that if I want to change driving modes on the go, it's a very easy system to navigate, but it's so comprehensive that you do really need to look and concentrate. And so I think there are some instances where you would almost need to pull over to access some of those settings. I also wish there was a head-up display for speed, because while that's in my view, it's very easy to look down and see the speed on the display. It would be much better if there was a head-up display feeding it to me on the windscreen. Autopilot is back and as good as ever, although a lot of manufacturers now are offering their own version of Autopilot, which all do very, very similar things, particularly in the UK, of where our rules are a little bit stricter when it comes to semi-autonomous driving modes, and so none of them can really break through. But what I do find very cool is that the cameras and sensors will actually pick up cars that are around you and obstacles that are around you and highlight it on the screen. So even though you're paying attention when Autopilot is active, it'll just give you these little graphics at the side of the screen that catch your peripheral vision and helps you avoid any potential accidents. So in general, I think Tesla has hit the nail on the head with the Model Y. It's got all of the tech that you want and expect from Tesla, and it genuinely is really fun to drive. And I think if you're new to driving a Tesla and you get in this thing, it's going to really just take you by surprise, because not only are they really fast and fun to drive, they're just very different. And sometimes that's what you want from a new car. You don't want to just continue with the status quo. You want something that's going to be interesting to drive and it's going to feel new. Now, I think as a whole, something like an Audi Q4 e-tron is still a really great alternative to this. And I think the actual competition has caught up with the Model Y. I think there are cars out there that do certain parts of the Model Y better than what Tesla can do. But as a whole package of something that feels ultra modern, feels like it's at the edge of technology, feels like a really well put together product, and has that charging network, I still think the Model Y is the car to beat.